How to Start Late and Still Get Ahead of Everyone. Introduction. There is a quiet fear that lives in the hearts of many people, a fear that whispers, "You are too late." Too late to start learning, too late to change direction, too late to build something meaningful, too late to catch up with those who began earlier, stronger, or with more advantages. This belief settles deeply, often without being questioned, and over time it becomes a silent barrier that prevents action. You see others who seem ahead, people who started younger, who had better opportunities, who appear more confident or more skilled, and it becomes easy to assume that your moment has passed. But what if that belief is not only false, but also one of the biggest illusions holding you back? What if starting late is not a disadvantage, but a hidden advantage waiting to be understood and used? This book is built on that idea, that it is entirely possible to begin later than others and still move faster, grow stronger, and ultimately get ahead, not by copying their path, but by using your unique position as someone who starts with awareness, intention, and urgency. Starting late does not mean starting from nothing. It often means starting with more clarity. When people begin early, they frequently move without direction, guided by trial and error, influenced by others, or simply following what is expected of them. They may spend years wandering, making mistakes, and building habits that are not always helpful. But when you start later, you carry something powerful: perspective. You have seen more, experienced more, and understood more about what works and what doesn't. You are not just beginning, you are beginning with insight. And insight, when combined with action, can accelerate progress in ways that time alone cannot. This is one of the core ideas you will explore throughout this book, that time is not the only factor that determines success. Focus, discipline, clarity, and consistency often matter far more. This book is not about denying reality. Yes, there are people who start earlier and build momentum before others even begin. Yes, some advantages exist in starting young. But this book is not written for those who began early. It is written for those who feel behind. And instead of telling you to compete in the same race under the same conditions, it will show you how to change the rules of the game. Because getting ahead is not about who starts first. It is about who uses their time better, who learns faster, who adapts quicker, and who refuses to stop. There are countless examples of individuals who started late and still achieved extraordinary success, not because they were lucky, but because they approached their journey differently. They understood something important: that a late start can create a sense of urgency, and urgency can become a powerful force when directed correctly. One of the biggest advantages of starting late is that you no longer have the luxury of wasting time. While this may sound like a disadvantage, it is actually a strength. When you feel that you are behind, you become more focused. You begin to value your time differently. You stop chasing distractions and start prioritizing what truly matters. You become more intentional with your actions. And in many cases, this level of focus allows you to make faster progress than those who have been moving slowly for years without clear direction. This book will help you develop that focus and turn it into a system, a way of thinking and acting that consistently moves you forward, regardless of where you started. Another important idea you will discover is that comparison is often misleading. When you compare your Chapter 1 to someone else's Chapter 10, you ignore everything that happened in between. You do not see their struggles, their failures, their doubts, or the time they wasted. You only see the result. And when you compare yourself in this way, you create unnecessary pressure and discouragement. This book will guide you away from that mindset and toward a more productive one, where your only real competition is your previous self. Progress becomes the goal, not perfection. Growth becomes the focus, not speed. And as you continue to improve, you will find that getting ahead is not about catching up to others, but about becoming better than who you were yesterday. You will also learn that starting late often comes with a deeper sense of purpose. When you begin something later in life, it is rarely by accident. It is usually because you have thought about it, felt the need for change, or reached a point where staying the same is no longer acceptable. This creates a stronger emotional connection to your goals. You are not just trying something, you are committing to it. And that commitment can carry you through challenges that might stop others. Purpose fuels persistence, and persistence is one of the most important ingredients of long-term success. Throughout this book, you will not find empty motivation or unrealistic promises. Instead, you will find practical ideas, clear strategies, and honest insights about what it takes to move forward when you feel behind. You will learn how to build discipline, how to manage your time effectively, how to stay consistent even when progress feels slow, and how to overcome the mental barriers that come with starting late. Most importantly, you will learn how to shift your perspective from seeing your late start as a weakness to recognizing it as a powerful starting point. This journey is not about rushing to success overnight. It is about building momentum step by step, making smarter decisions, and using your time with purpose. It is about understanding that while you may not control when you started, you fully control how you move forward. And when you combine that control with the right mindset and actions, something remarkable happens. The gap between you and others begins to close, not slowly, but steadily, and sometimes even faster than you expected. So if you have ever felt like you missed your chance, like you are behind, or like others have already taken the opportunities you wanted, this book is for you. Not to comfort you, but to challenge you. Not to tell you that everything will be easy, but to show you that everything is still possible. Because the truth is simple, even if it is not always easy to accept. It is never too late to start, and it is never too late to get ahead, if you are willing to begin, and more importantly, if you are willing to continue. Chapter 1. The Myth of Being Too Late. There comes a moment in many people's lives when they pause, look around, and feel a quiet but heavy realization. I should have started earlier. It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't shout. Instead, it settles gently into your thoughts and begins to repeat itself in different forms. You see someone younger achieving something you once dreamed about, and the voice whispers, "You're behind." You think about a skill you always wanted to learn, and the voice adds, "It's too late now." You reflect on your past decisions, and the voice concludes, "If only you had started sooner." Over time, this belief grows stronger, shaping the way you see yourself in your future. It becomes less of a thought and more of a truth in your mind. But what if this truth is not true at all? What if the idea of being too late is not a fact, but a myth, one that has been repeated so often that it feels real? The myth of being too late is powerful because it feels logical. Time moves in one direction. Opportunities seem to come and go. People who start earlier often appear to have an advantage. From the outside, it looks like a race where those who begin first are destined to win. And if you join late, it seems like you are already behind before you even take your first step. This perspective is understandable, but it is incomplete. It focuses only on time and ignores everything else that truly matters: direction, effort, learning speed, adaptability, and consistency. Starting early without focus can lead to years of slow or misguided progress. Starting late with clarity and determination can lead to rapid growth and meaningful results. The difference is not just when you start, but how you start and how you continue. Many people who start early do not realize the advantage they are wasting. They assume that time alone will carry them forward, so they move without urgency. They delay learning, postpone discipline, and allow distractions to take control of their days. Years pass, and while they have technically been in the game longer, their progress does not match the time invested. On the other hand, someone who starts late often feels a sense of urgency that cannot be ignored. There is an awareness that time matters, that every day counts, that delays have consequences. This awareness creates focus. It pushes you to act with intention. It forces you to ask better questions. What truly matters? What should I prioritize? What is the fastest way to improve? These questions are not asked by someone who believes they have endless time. They are asked by someone who understands the value of each moment, and that understanding can become a powerful advantage. It is also important to understand that starting late often comes with emotional strength that early starters may not have. When you decide to begin something later, it is usually not a casual decision. It comes from reflection, from dissatisfaction with where you are, from a desire for change. This creates a deeper level of commitment. You are not just exploring, you are choosing. And that choice carries weight. It gives your actions meaning. It helps you push through difficulties because you know why you started. This sense of purpose can be stronger than any advantage gained from starting early. Because in the long run, it is not enthusiasm that keeps you going, it is commitment. The truth is, being too late is not a condition, it is a perception. It exists only in the way you interpret your situation. Two people can be in the exact same position, with the same age, the same experience, and the same opportunities. One believes they are too late and does nothing. The other believes they still have time and takes action. Over time, their paths will look completely different, not because of when they started, but because of what they believed and how they acted. This is why your mindset matters so much. It shapes your decisions, your effort, and your persistence, and those, in turn, shape your results. As you move forward in this book, you will begin to see that the idea of being too late is not something you need to accept. It is something you need to reject, not blindly, but consciously. You will learn to replace it with a more useful belief that your starting point does not define your destination. What defines your destination is what you do next and what you continue to do after that. Every day you act, you reduce the distance between where you are and where you want to be. Every day you delay, you increase it. The choice is always present, even if it does not always feel that way. So let this be the first shift you make. Stop asking whether you are too late and start asking what you can do now. Stop focusing on the time you have lost and start focusing on the time you still have. Because while you cannot change your past, you have complete control over your present, and your present is where your future is built. The myth of being too late loses its power the moment you decide to move forward despite it. And once you take that step, you will realize something important. You were never as late as you thought. You were simply waiting to begin. Chapter 2: The Hidden Advantage of Starting Late. At first glance, starting late feels like a disadvantage you must constantly overcome. It feels like you are entering a race after everyone else has already taken several steps ahead. There is pressure, doubt, and an almost automatic belief that you must work twice as hard just to reach the same place. But what most people fail to see is that starting late carries something unexpected, an advantage that is not obvious at the beginning but becomes powerful once you understand it. It is not an advantage given to you freely. It is an advantage you must recognize, develop, and use intentionally. And once you do, it can allow you to move faster, think smarter, and progress more efficiently than those who started before you. One of the most important advantages of starting late is clarity. When people begin early, they often do so without fully understanding what they want or why they want it. They experiment, they explore, and while this can be valuable, it also leads to wasted time and scattered effort. They may spend years moving in directions that do not truly align with their goals, simply because they had the time to do so. But when you start later, you rarely have that luxury. You have already experienced enough to know what does not work for you. You have seen paths that lead nowhere, choices that bring no satisfaction, and efforts that produce little result. This awareness allows you to begin with intention. You are not just starting, you are choosing carefully where to invest your time and energy, and that choice gives you focus. Focus is one of the most underestimated forces behind success. It is not just about working hard, it is about working on the right things, in the right way, at the right time. When you are focused, your efforts are not scattered. You are not trying to do everything at once. Instead, you concentrate on what matters most and give it your full attention. This is where starting late becomes powerful. Because you feel the weight of time, you naturally begin to prioritize. You ask yourself, what will actually move me forward? What is worth my effort? What can I ignore? These questions help you eliminate distractions and concentrate your energy where it counts. And when energy is concentrated, results come faster. Another hidden advantage of starting late is the ability to learn more efficiently. When you are younger or just beginning without much awareness, you often learn through trial and error. You make mistakes, correct them, and slowly improve. This process can take a long time because you do not yet know how to learn effectively. But when you start later, you bring with you the ability to observe, analyze, and adapt more quickly. You can study others who have already succeeded, understand what they did right, and apply those lessons to your own journey. You are less likely to repeat unnecessary mistakes because you can learn from the experiences of others. In a way, you are not starting from zero. You are starting with access to knowledge that can shorten your path. This efficiency in learning leads to another important advantage: faster progress. When your actions are guided by clarity and your learning is guided by awareness, you begin to improve at a quicker rate. You do not waste as much time figuring out basic things. You move directly into meaningful work. And as you continue, your progress builds on itself. Small improvements turn into noticeable growth. What once felt difficult becomes manageable. What once seemed far away begins to feel closer. This is the moment when you realize that starting late did not slow you down. It simply changed the way you move. There is also a psychological advantage that often goes unnoticed: the strength that comes from dissatisfaction. People who start late are often driven by a deep desire for change. They have reached a point where staying the same is no longer acceptable. This creates a kind of internal pressure, not the negative kind that leads to stress, but the motivating kind that pushes you to act. You are no longer comfortable with delay. You no longer want to postpone your goals. This discomfort becomes fuel. It gives you the energy to keep going, even when things are difficult. And over time, this persistence becomes one of your greatest strengths. In contrast, those who start early sometimes lack this sense of urgency. They believe they have time, so they delay effort. They assume they can always do more later, so they do less now. And while this may not seem like a problem at first, it often leads to slow progress. Without urgency, it is easy to become comfortable. Without pressure, it is easy to remain at the same level. But when you start late, comfort is no longer an option. You are aware that time matters, and that awareness pushes you forward. Another advantage that comes with starting late is emotional maturity. By the time you decide to begin, you have likely faced challenges, experienced failure, and learned how to handle setbacks. This gives you resilience, the ability to continue even when things do not go as planned. Early starters often struggle with this because they are encountering these difficulties for the first time. They may become discouraged or give up when progress is not immediate. But you, having already faced difficulties in other areas of life, are better prepared. You understand that setbacks are part of the process, not a sign to stop. This mindset allows you to stay consistent, and consistency is what turns effort into results. It is also worth recognizing that starting late often forces you to take responsibility in a deeper way. You cannot rely on excuses. You cannot blame your situation entirely on others. At some point, you must accept that while you may not control when you started, you do control what you do next. This sense of responsibility is empowering. It shifts your focus from what you lack to what you can do. And when you focus on what you can do, you begin to take action. That action, repeated over time, becomes progress. However, these advantages do not automatically work in your favor. Simply starting late does not guarantee success. The advantage only appears when you use it. If you carry the belief that you are behind and allow it to stop you, then the advantage is lost. But if you recognize your position clearly, if you understand that you have clarity, focus, urgency, and the ability to learn efficiently, then you can use these qualities to your benefit. You can turn what once felt like a weakness into a strength. This is the shift you must make. Instead of seeing your late start as something you need to overcome, begin to see it as something you can use. It is not about pretending that you have more time than you do. It is about using the time you have more effectively. It is about making decisions with intention, taking action with focus, and continuing with discipline. When you combine these elements, your progress becomes steady and meaningful. As you continue through this book, you will learn how to strengthen these advantages and turn them into habits. You will discover how to maintain focus, how to learn faster, and how to build consistency in your actions. But for now, understand this. You are not starting from a place of weakness. You are starting from a place of awareness. And awareness, when combined with action, is one of the most powerful starting points you can have. So do not underestimate where you are. Do not assume that others have an advantage that you cannot match. Instead, recognize the unique position you are in. You may have started later, but you are starting wiser. And in many cases, that makes all the difference. Chapter 3. Urgency. Turning time into your greatest asset. There is a moment, often quiet but deeply personal, when you become aware of time in a way you never did before. It is not the simple awareness that days pass or that years move forward. That is something everyone knows. This is different. It is a sharper realization, one that carries weight. It is the understanding that time is not unlimited, that opportunities are not guaranteed to wait, and that the future you imagine depends entirely on what you choose to do now. For those who start late, this awareness arrives with greater intensity. It does not feel like a distant idea. It feels immediate, real, and impossible to ignore. And while this realization can initially create pressure, it also holds something incredibly valuable: urgency. Not panic, not fear, but a focused, intentional urgency that, when used correctly, can become one of your greatest assets. Urgency is often misunderstood. Many people associate it with stress, rushing, or acting without thinking. They imagine it as a constant state of pressure that leads to exhaustion. But true urgency is not about moving faster in a chaotic way. It is about moving with purpose. It is about recognizing what matters and giving it the attention it deserves without delay. It is about eliminating what is unnecessary so that you can fully commit to what is essential. When you develop this kind of urgency, your relationship with time begins to change. You no longer see time as something that simply passes. You see it as something you can use, shape, and invest. For someone who feels they started late, urgency naturally begins as a reaction. You look at your current position, compare it to where you want to be, and feel the gap between the two. That gap creates discomfort, and from that discomfort comes the desire to move, to act, to close the distance. At first, this can feel overwhelming. You may feel like you need to do everything at once, to make up for lost time immediately. But this is where many people make a mistake. They confuse urgency with rushing. They try to compensate for the past by overloading the present, and in doing so, they lose focus. True urgency does not mean doing more. It means doing what matters, consistently and without hesitation.
The key to turning urgency into an advantage lies in direction. Without direction, urgency becomes wasted energy. With direction, it becomes momentum. Imagine two people with the same desire to improve. One feels urgency but does not know where to focus, so they jump from one task to another, never staying long enough to make real progress. The other feels the same urgency but channels it into a clear plan, focusing on one meaningful action at a time. Over weeks and months, the difference becomes clear. The second person moves forward steadily, building skill, confidence, and results. The first remains busy but unchanged. This is why urgency must be paired with clarity. It is not enough to feel the need to act. You must know where to direct that action. When urgency is used correctly, it changes the way you approach your daily life. Small moments that once seemed insignificant begin to matter. You become more aware of how you spend your time. You notice distractions more clearly, and you become less willing to give them your attention. Activities that do not contribute to your progress begin to feel out of place. This does not mean you remove all rest or enjoyment from your life, but it does mean you become intentional. You choose when to rest, when to work, and when to focus. You are no longer reacting to your environment, you are shaping it. Another powerful effect of urgency is that it strengthens discipline. When you understand the value of time, you become more consistent in your actions. You no longer wait for motivation because you know that waiting leads to delay, and delay leads to stagnation. Instead, you act even when you do not feel like it. You begin to build habits that support your goals, not because they are easy, but because they are necessary. And over time, these habits reduce the effort required to move forward. What once required strong motivation becomes automatic. This is how urgency transforms into discipline, by repeated action that becomes part of your routine. It is important, however, to maintain balance. Urgency should push you forward, not burn you out. There is a difference between consistent effort and constant pressure. If you treat every moment as a race, you will exhaust yourself. But if you treat every moment as an opportunity to move forward, you will create sustainable progress. This is why it is essential to combine urgency with patience. You must act consistently, but also understand that results take time. Growth is not always visible immediately. Progress is often slow at first, and then it accelerates. If you lose patience too quickly, you may stop before your efforts begin to show results. But if you stay consistent, guided by urgency and supported by patience, you will begin to see the impact of your actions. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to stop seeing time as something you have lost and start seeing it as something you can still use. The past is fixed.
It cannot be changed, improved, or recovered. But the present is active. Every decision you make, every action you take, shapes what comes next. Urgency helps you stay connected to this truth. It reminds you that what you do today matters more than what you failed to do yesterday. And when you focus on the present, you regain control. You stop being defined by your past and start being driven by your actions. There is also a deeper layer to urgency that goes beyond productivity and progress. It is the realization that your time is not just limited, it is valuable. Not because of what you can achieve, but because of what you can become. When you act with urgency, you are not just chasing results, you are shaping your character. You are becoming someone who takes action, who follows through, who values growth. And this identity, once formed, influences everything you do. It changes how you think, how you decide, and how you respond to challenges. As you continue your journey, you will begin to notice that urgency, when used correctly, does not feel like pressure. It feels like clarity. It simplifies your decisions. It removes unnecessary hesitation. It helps you focus on what truly matters. And most importantly, it keeps you moving. Because progress is not about making one big change. It is about making consistent, meaningful actions over time. So instead of fearing that you are late, use that feeling as fuel. Let it remind you that your time matters. Let it push you to act with intention. But do not let it overwhelm you. Direct it, shape it, use it. Because when urgency is combined with clarity, discipline, and patience, it becomes more than just a reaction to time. It becomes a tool for transforming it. And when you learn to use time instead of fear it, something important happens. You stop trying to catch up, and you start moving forward with purpose.
Chapter 4. Focus, the discipline of doing what matters. In a world filled with constant noise, endless options, and unlimited distractions, focus has become one of the rarest and most valuable skills a person can develop. It is no longer enough to simply work hard. Many people work hard. Many people stay busy. But being busy is not the same as making progress. An effort without direction often leads nowhere. This is especially important for those who feel they started late. When time feels limited, you cannot afford to scatter your energy across too many things. You cannot afford to move without purpose. This is where focus becomes essential. Not as a simple idea, but as a discipline that shapes every decision you make. Focus begins with a simple but difficult question. What truly matters? Not what seems urgent, not what others expect from you, not what is easy or comfortable, but what actually moves you forward. This question requires honesty. It forces you to look at your actions and evaluate whether they are aligned with your goals. And for many people, this is uncomfortable, because it reveals a truth that is often ignored. A large part of what we do every day does not contribute to where we want to go. We fill our time with tasks that feel productive but do not create real progress. We respond to distractions, follow habits without thinking, and convince ourselves that we are moving forward simply because we are active. But activity without direction is just movement, not progress. For someone who starts late, this realization can be powerful. It creates a natural filter. When you understand that your time is valuable, you begin to question how you spend it. You become more selective. You start to remove what is unnecessary and focus on what is essential. This does not happen instantly. It is a process. At first, you may still feel pulled in many directions. You may still struggle to say no to distractions. But over time, as you continue to choose what matters over what is easy, your focus strengthens. And with stronger focus comes faster progress. One of the biggest challenges to focus is the illusion of multitasking.
It often feels productive to do several things at once, to switch quickly between tasks, to keep everything moving at the same time. But in reality, this constant switching reduces the quality of your work and slows your progress. Your attention becomes divided, your energy becomes scattered, and your results suffer. True focus requires the opposite approach. It requires you to give your full attention to one meaningful task at a time. It requires you to be present in what you are doing, without constantly looking for something else. This level of concentration may feel difficult at first, especially if you are used to distractions, but it is a skill that improves with practice, and once developed, it allows you to produce better results in less time.
However, focus is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It is something you must practice daily. Distractions will always exist. New opportunities will always appear. There will always be moments when it feels easier to follow what is comfortable instead of what is important. This is why focus must be intentional. It is a choice you make again and again, and each time you choose to concentrate on what matters, you strengthen that ability. For those who feel they started late, focus can become the defining factor of success. While others may rely on the advantage of time, you rely on the quality of your actions. You do not try to do everything. You do what matters most, with full attention and consistent effort. And over time, this approach creates results that are not just faster, but also more meaningful. It is important to understand that focus does not mean perfection. You will still have days where your attention is scattered, where distractions take over, where progress feels slow. That is part of the process. What matters is not that you are perfect, but that you return to focus, that you recognize when you are off track and bring yourself back. Each time you do this, you strengthen your discipline and improve your ability to stay on course. As you move forward, begin to see focus not as a restriction, but as a tool. It is what allows you to use your time effectively. It is what turns effort into progress. It is what transforms your late start into a powerful position. Because when you are focused, you are not competing with everyone. You are moving with purpose. And in the end, purpose always moves faster than distraction. Chapter 5. Consistency, the quiet power that changes everything. There is a common belief that success comes from big moments, sudden breakthroughs, powerful decisions, or dramatic changes that transform everything overnight. These moments are appealing because they feel exciting and immediate. They create the impression that progress is something that happens all at once, as if one action can suddenly place you ahead of everyone else. But in reality, lasting progress rarely works this way. It is not built in a single moment, but in many small ones. It is not the result of one powerful effort, but of repeated, consistent actions over time. And for those who start late, consistency is not just important, it is essential. It is the force that allows you to close the gap, build momentum, and create results that others often underestimate. Consistency does not look impressive at the beginning. It is quiet. It is simple. It often feels repetitive. You show up, you do the work, and you repeat the process the next day. There are no immediate rewards, no visible signs of transformation, no clear indication that you are moving forward. This is why many people struggle with it. They expect progress to be visible right away, and when it is not, they lose motivation. They begin to question their effort, their direction, and even their ability. But what they failed to see is that consistency works beneath the surface before it becomes visible on the outside. Each action may seem small on its own, but together they create something powerful. When you start late, it is easy to feel pressure to move quickly, to make up for lost time as fast as possible. This pressure can lead you to focus on intensity rather than consistency.
You may push yourself hard for a short period, trying to achieve rapid results, only to feel exhausted and lose momentum soon after. This cycle, intense effort followed by burnout, is one of the biggest obstacles to progress. It feels productive in the moment, but it is not sustainable, and without sustainability, progress stops. Consistency offers a different path. Instead of doing everything at once, it asks you to do something regularly. Instead of pushing to the limit, it encourages steady effort. And over time, this steady effort becomes more powerful than any short burst of intensity. One of the most important aspects of consistency is that it builds trust, not with others, but with yourself. Every time you follow through on your commitments, you reinforce a simple belief: I do what I say I will do. This belief may seem small, but it has a profound impact on your confidence. When you trust yourself, you hesitate less, you doubt less. You take action more easily because you know that you will follow through. On the other hand, when you break your own commitments repeatedly, even in small ways, you weaken that trust. You begin to question your ability to stay consistent, and that doubt makes it harder to act. This is why consistency is not just about results, it is about identity. It shapes how you see yourself.
Another powerful effect of consistency is that it reduces the need for motivation. Many people rely on motivation to get started, but motivation is unpredictable. Some days it is strong, and other days it is absent. If your progress depends on how you feel, it will always be unstable. But when you build consistent habits, you no longer depend on motivation. You act because it is part of your routine, not because you feel inspired. This shift is critical. It turns action from something emotional into something reliable. And once your actions become reliable, your progress becomes steady. Consistency also creates momentum, and momentum changes how effort feels. At the beginning, everything requires effort. You must think about what to do, push yourself to start, and maintain focus while working. But as you repeat the same actions over time, they become easier. Your mind and body adapt. What once felt difficult begins to feel normal. This is the point where momentum starts to build. You no longer need as much effort to continue because you are already in motion. And once you reach this stage, progress becomes faster, not because you are working harder, but because you are working more efficiently. It is important to understand that consistency does not mean perfection. You will have days where you miss your routine, where your energy is low, or where unexpected challenges interrupt your plans. This is normal. What matters is not that you never fail, but that you return quickly. Missing one day does not stop your progress. Missing many days in a row does. Consistency is not about never stopping. It is about not staying stopped. Each time you return, you continue building on what you have already created. For those who feel they started late, consistency provides something that time alone cannot: acceleration through discipline. While others may rely on the years they have invested, you rely on the quality and regularity of your effort. You do not try to match their timeline. You build your own, based on steady progress. And over time, this approach allows you to close the gap, not in a dramatic or sudden way, but in a quiet and reliable one. Day by day you improve, week by week you grow, and eventually the results become visible. There is also a psychological benefit to consistency that often goes unnoticed. It reduces overwhelm. When you focus on doing a small amount regularly, your goals feel more manageable. You are not trying to achieve everything at once. You are simply taking the next step. This makes it easier to begin, and once you begin, it becomes easier to continue. Large goals can feel intimidating, but consistent actions break them into smaller, achievable parts. This allows you to make progress without feeling overwhelmed by the size of your ambitions. As you continue your journey, you will begin to see that consistency is not just a method,
It is a mindset. It is the decision to show up even when it is difficult. It is the commitment to continue even when progress feels slow. It is the understanding that small actions, repeated over time, create significant change. And most importantly, it is the belief that your efforts matter, even when they are not immediately visible. So instead of searching for quick results or waiting for the perfect moment, focus on what you can do consistently. Choose actions that move you forward and commit to repeating them. Trust that each step, no matter how small, is part of a larger process. Because in the end, it is not the intensity of your effort that determines your success. It is your ability to continue. And when you learn to continue, even when it is not easy, you unlock one of the most powerful forces for getting ahead: the quiet, steady, and unstoppable power of consistency. Chapter 6. Learning Faster: How to Compress Time Through Smart Growth. One of the most common fears of starting late is the belief that there simply isn't enough time to catch up. You look at others who have spent years developing their skills, building experience, and refining their abilities, and it feels impossible to reach their level within a shorter period. This belief is understandable, but it is based on a limited view of how progress actually works. It assumes that learning is a slow, fixed process, that it takes the same amount of time for everyone, regardless of how they approach it. But this is not true. Learning is not just about time, it is about method. And when your method improves, your speed improves. This is where one of your greatest advantages lies: the ability to learn faster, not by rushing, but by learning smarter. When people start early, they often learn without structure. They explore, experiment, and figure things out through trial and error. While this can be valuable, it is also inefficient. They make mistakes that could have been avoided, spend time on information that is not essential, and develop habits that may not serve them in the long run. But when you start later, you have access to something they often didn't: perspective. You can see the paths others have taken. You can identify what works and what doesn't. You can choose better strategies from the beginning. This allows you to compress time, not by skipping steps, but by avoiding unnecessary ones. Learning faster begins with clarity. You need to know exactly what you are trying to learn and why it matters. Without clarity, your efforts become scattered. You consume information without direction, moving from one topic to another without building depth. But when you are clear about your goal, you can focus only on what is relevant. You filter out what does not contribute to your progress. This makes your learning more efficient because every piece of information you absorb has a purpose. Another important aspect of faster learning is active engagement. Many people confuse learning with consuming information. They read, watch, and listen, believing that this alone will improve their skills. But true learning happens when you interact with the material. When you apply what you learn, test your understanding, and make mistakes, you deepen your knowledge. Passive learning may feel easier, but it leads to shallow results. Active learning requires more effort, but it creates lasting progress. For someone starting late, this difference is critical. You cannot afford to spend months absorbing information without applying it. You must turn knowledge into action as quickly as possible.
Feedback is another powerful tool for accelerating learning. When you act without feedback, you may continue making the same mistakes without realizing it. This slows your progress because you are not improving effectively. But when you seek feedback, whether from others, from results, or from self-reflection, you gain insight into what needs to change. This allows you to adjust your approach and improve faster. Feedback shortens the distance between effort and improvement. It turns mistakes into lessons and lessons into progress. It is also important to understand the role of repetition. While learning faster involves efficiency, it does not eliminate the need for practice.
In fact, repetition is what transforms knowledge into skill. The difference is in how you repeat. Instead of repeating blindly, you repeat with awareness. You focus on improving specific aspects each time. You refine your technique, correct your errors, and build precision. This kind of deliberate practice is far more effective than simply doing the same thing over and over without thought. It allows you to improve with each attempt rather than just accumulate experience. One of the biggest obstacles to faster learning is the fear of making mistakes. When you start late, you may feel pressure to get things right quickly. You may hesitate to act because you want to avoid failure. But this hesitation slows you down. Mistakes are not signs of weakness, they are part of the learning process. In fact, they are one of the fastest ways to improve. Each mistake reveals something you did not know, something you need to adjust, something you can learn from. When you accept this, you begin to see mistakes differently. They are no longer obstacles, they are opportunities. Another advantage of starting late is that you are more likely to approach learning with intention. You are not learning because you are expected to. You are learning because you have chosen to. This choice creates focus. It makes you more willing to invest effort, to stay consistent, and to push through challenges. You are not just collecting knowledge, you are building something meaningful. And this purpose strengthens your ability to learn quickly because it keeps you engaged. It is also worth recognizing that learning faster does not mean learning everything. In fact, trying to learn too much at once can slow you down. Your mind needs time to process and organize information. If you overload it, you reduce your ability to understand and apply what you learn. This is why it is important to prioritize depth over quantity. Focus on mastering key concepts before moving on to new ones. Build a strong foundation and then expand. This approach may feel slower at first, but it leads to stronger and more reliable progress.
As you continue, you will begin to notice that learning faster changes your relationship with time. Instead of feeling limited by it, you begin to use it more effectively. You see that progress is not just about how long you have been learning, but about how well you have been learning. This realization removes the pressure of catching up and replaces it with the opportunity to grow efficiently. For those who start late, this is a powerful shift. You no longer compare your timeline to others. You focus on your method. You improve your ability to learn, and in doing so, you accelerate your progress. Over time, this creates a noticeable difference. While others may rely on the years they have invested, you rely on the quality of your learning. And often, quality can surpass quantity. This does not mean that the journal becomes easy. Learning still requires effort, patience, and persistence. There will be moments of confusion, frustration, and doubt. But with the right approach, these moments become part of the process, not barriers to it. You move through them, learn from them, and continue. So instead of asking how long it will take, begin to ask how well you are learning. Focus on clarity, engagement, feedback, and deliberate practice. Use your awareness to guide your efforts. And trust that by improving your method, you are not just learning, you are compressing time itself. Because in the end, it is not the person who spends the most time learning who gets ahead. It is the one who learns in the most effective way.
Chapter 7. Discipline. Doing what matters even when you don't feel like it. At some point in your journey, you will face a truth that cannot be avoided. Motivation is not reliable. There will be days when you feel inspired, focused, and ready to take action. Everything will seem clear and progress will feel natural. But there will also be days when that feeling disappears, when you feel tired, distracted, or uncertain. On those days, the desire to act will be weak, and the temptation to delay will be strong. If your progress depends only on how you feel, it will always be inconsistent. This is where discipline becomes essential.
not as a harsh or restrictive force, but as a steady foundation that allows you to continue regardless of your mood. Discipline is often misunderstood as something rigid, something that removes freedom or enjoyment from your life. But in reality, discipline is what creates freedom. It is what allows you to move forward even when conditions are not perfect. It is what keeps you aligned with your goals when distractions appear. And most importantly, it is what turns intention into action. Without discipline, even the best plans remain ideas. With discipline, ideas become progress. For someone who starts late, discipline carries even greater importance. You may not have the advantage of time, but you can develop the advantage of consistency and reliability. Discipline allows you to use your time effectively. It ensures that your efforts are not dependent on temporary feelings, but on a deeper commitment to your goals. This commitment is what separates those who wish to change from those who actually do. At its core, discipline is the ability to do what needs to be done even when you do not feel like doing it. This may sound simple, but it requires practice. Your mind naturally seeks comfort. It prefers what is easy, familiar, and immediately rewarding. Growth, on the other hand, often requires effort, discomfort, and delayed results. Discipline is what bridges this gap. It allows you to choose long-term progress over short-term comfort.
One of the most effective ways to build discipline is through structure. When your actions are guided by clear routines, you reduce the need for constant decision-making. You do not wake up each day asking yourself whether you should act. You already know what needs to be done. This removes hesitation and makes action more automatic. Structure creates stability, and stability supports discipline. However, discipline is not built in a single moment. It develops over time, through repeated choices. Each time you choose to act despite resistance, you strengthen it. Each time you follow through on your commitments, you reinforce it. And each time you give in to distraction or delay, you weaken it. This is why small decisions matter. Discipline is not only tested in big moments, it is shaped in everyday actions. Another important aspect of discipline is self-awareness. You need to understand your patterns, when you are most focused, when you are most distracted, what triggers delay, and what supports action. This awareness allows you to design your environment in a way that supports your goals. You can reduce distractions, create better routines, and make it easier to stay on track. Discipline is not just about forcing yourself to act, it is also about creating conditions that make action more likely. It is also important to separate discipline from perfection. Many people believe that being disciplined means never failing, never missing a day, and always performing at a high level. This belief creates unnecessary pressure and often leads to frustration. In reality, discipline is not about being perfect, it is about being consistent. You will have days where your effort is lower, where your focus is weaker, or where you miss your routine. What matters is not that you never fall off track, but that you return quickly. The strength of discipline lies in your ability to continue, not in your ability to avoid mistakes. For those who start late, discipline also provides a sense of control. It shifts your focus from what you cannot change to what you can influence. You may not be able to go back and start earlier, but you can choose how you act today. You can decide to use your time with intention. You can commit to your goals and follow through. This sense of control is empowering. It replaces regret with action and doubt with progress. Another powerful effect of discipline is that it builds resilience. When you act consistently, even when it is difficult, you become stronger. Challenges that once felt overwhelming become manageable. Resistance that once stopped you becomes something you can move through. This resilience allows you to continue even when progress is slow or when results are not immediately visible. And over time, this persistence leads to growth.
It is also worth recognizing that discipline reduces mental conflict. When you rely on motivation, you are constantly negotiating with yourself. Should I act now or later? Should I push forward or take a break? This internal struggle consumes energy and creates stress. But when you are disciplined, the decision is already made. You act because it is part of your routine, not because you feel like it. This simplifies your thinking and allows you to focus on the work itself. As you continue to develop discipline, you will notice a shift in your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who takes action, someone who is reliable. This identity reinforces your behavior. It makes discipline feel natural rather than forced. And once this identity is established, your progress becomes more stable. It is important to remember that discipline is not something you either have or do not have. It is something you build. It starts small, it grows with practice, and over time, it becomes one of your strongest assets, especially if you started late, because it allows you to move forward with consistency, regardless of external circumstances. So do not wait to feel ready. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Start where you are, with what you have, and commit to taking action, even when it is difficult, even when it is uncomfortable, because every time you choose discipline over delay, you move closer to your goals. And in the end, it is not motivation that will get you ahead, it is your ability to continue long after motivation has faded.
Chapter 8. Resilience, Turning Setbacks into Strength. No matter how clear your goals are, how strong your discipline becomes, or how focused your actions feel, there will be moments when things do not go as planned. Progress will slow down. Efforts will not produce the expected results. Mistakes will happen. Sometimes, despite doing everything right, you will face obstacles that seem unfair or unexpected. These moments are not exceptions, they are part of the journey. And for those who start late, they can feel even heavier. Because when you already feel behind, every setback can seem like proof that you will never catch up. But this is where one of the most important qualities comes into play: resilience. Resilience is not about avoiding failure. It is not about pretending that difficulties do not exist or that everything will always work out easily. It is about how you respond when things go wrong. It is the ability to continue moving forward even when progress is not smooth. It is the strength to face challenges without losing direction. And most importantly, it is the mindset that turns setbacks into opportunities for growth. At first, setbacks can feel discouraging. You invest time and effort into something, expecting improvement, and when the results do not match your expectations, it creates doubt. You begin to question your ability, your strategy, and sometimes even your decision to start. This is a natural reaction. But what separates those who continue from those who stop is not the absence of doubt, it is what they do with it. Resilient individuals do not allow doubt to control their actions. They acknowledge it, learn from it, and move forward despite it. One of the key shifts in developing resilience is changing how you interpret failure. Most people see failure as a negative outcome, something to avoid at all costs. But in reality, failure is information. It shows you what does not work, what needs adjustment, and where you can improve. Without failure, growth becomes limited. If everything worked perfectly from the beginning, there would be no need to learn, adapt, or refine your approach. But because failure exists, you are given the opportunity to improve. When you begin to see setbacks as feedback rather than defeat, your perspective changes. Instead of stopping, you start asking better questions. What can I learn from this? What should I do differently? How can I improve next time? For someone who starts late, this mindset is especially important. You may feel that you cannot afford to fail, that every mistake puts you further behind. But the truth is the opposite. Avoiding failure slows you down because it prevents you from learning.
Embracing failure, on the other hand, accelerates your growth. Each mistake becomes a lesson. Each setback becomes a step forward, if you are willing to learn from it. Resilience is also closely connected to patience. Progress is rarely linear. There will be periods where improvement is clear and motivating, and there will be periods where it feels slow or even stagnant. During these slower phases, it is easy to become discouraged. You may feel like your efforts are not working, like you are stuck, like you are not moving forward. But this is often part of the process. Growth sometimes happens beneath the surface before it becomes visible. Skills are developing, understanding is deepening, and habits are forming, even if you cannot immediately see the results. Patience allows you to continue during these phases, trusting that your efforts will eventually lead to progress. Another important aspect of resilience is emotional control. Challenges often bring strong emotions: frustration, disappointment, self-doubt. These emotions can influence your decisions if you are not careful. You may feel like giving up, changing direction too quickly, or avoiding effort altogether. But resilience requires you to separate your emotions from your actions. You can feel frustrated and still continue. You can feel uncertain and still take the next step. You do not need to wait for your emotions to be perfect before acting. In fact, acting despite imperfect emotions is what strengthens resilience. It is also important to recognize that resilience is built through experience. You do not become resilient by avoiding difficulty. You become resilient by facing it. Each challenge you overcome adds to your confidence. It shows you that you are capable of continuing, even when things are not easy. Over time, this creates a sense of inner strength. You begin to trust your ability to handle setbacks. And this trust reduces fear, because you know that even if things go wrong, you will find a way forward. For those who start late, resilience can become a defining advantage. While others may rely on a smooth path or early success, you develop the ability to adapt, recover, and continue. You learn how to move through difficulty rather than avoid it. And this ability becomes more valuable over time because challenges do not disappear as you progress. They evolve. The higher you go, the more complex the obstacles become. Without resilience, progress stops. With resilience, progress continues. Another powerful element of resilience is perspective. When you face a setback, it is easy to focus only on the immediate situation. You see the failure, the mistake, or the delay, and it feels significant. But when you step back and look at your journey as a whole, that moment becomes smaller. It is just one part of a larger process. This perspective helps you stay balanced. It prevents you from overreacting to temporary difficulties and allows you to stay focused on your long-term goals. It is also worth understanding that resilience does not mean you never feel discouraged. It does not mean you are always strong or confident. It means that even when you feel discouraged, you do not stop. You allow yourself to feel, but you do not let those feelings define your actions. You continue to show up. You continue to try, and with each step, you move forward. As you build resilience, you will begin to notice a shift in how you approach challenges. What once felt like a barrier begins to feel like part of the process. What once caused doubt begins to create learning, and what once slowed you down begins to strengthen you. This transformation does not happen overnight, but with time and practice, it becomes part of who you are. So when setbacks appear, and they will, do not see them as signs to stop. See them as moments to grow. Use them to refine your approach, strengthen your mindset, and continue your journey with greater awareness. Because in the end, it is not the absence of obstacles that determines your success. It is your ability to move through them. And when you learn to turn setbacks into strength, you gain something more valuable than progress. You gain the ability to continue, no matter what stands in your way.
Chapter 9. Self-Belief. Trusting yourself before the results appear. There is a stage in every journey where nothing seems to prove that you are on the right path. You are putting in effort, staying consistent, learning, improving, but the results are not yet visible. There is no clear reward, no strong validation, no external confirmation that what you are doing is working. This is one of the most difficult phases to navigate, especially for someone who feels they started late. Because when you already carry the weight of being behind, the absence of results can feel like confirmation of your doubts. It can make you question everything, your decisions, your abilities, your direction. And in these moments, one thing becomes essential: self-belief. Self-belief is not blind confidence. It is not pretending that everything will work out without effort. It is not ignoring reality or denying challenges. True self-belief is quieter and stronger than that. It is the decision to trust yourself, to trust that your actions matter, that your progress is real even if it is not yet visible, and that your effort will eventually lead somewhere meaningful. It is the ability to continue even when there is no immediate proof that you should. For someone who starts late, self-belief often feels harder to develop. You may look at others who have already achieved what you are working toward and feel a gap that seems too large to close. You may question whether you have what it takes, whether you are capable of reaching the same level, whether your timing has already limited your potential. These thoughts are natural, but they are not reliable. They are based on comparison, not on your actual ability. And comparison, as you have already seen, often hides more than it reveals. The challenge with self-belief is that it must come before evidence. You cannot wait for results to believe in yourself, because without belief, you may never stay consistent long enough to see those results. This creates a kind of paradox. You need belief to produce results, but you want results to create belief. Breaking this cycle requires a shift in how you define progress. Instead of measuring your worth by outcomes, you begin to measure it by your actions. Are you showing up? Are you improving? Are you staying consistent? These are the questions that build self-belief because they are within your control. One of the most effective ways to strengthen self-belief is through small, consistent wins. Not dramatic achievements, but simple actions that you complete every day. Each time you follow through on your commitments, you create evidence, not external evidence, but internal proof that you are capable of acting, improving, and continuing. These small wins may seem insignificant, but over time, they build a strong foundation. They show you that you are not just hoping to change, you are actively changing. It is also important to understand that self-belief grows through action, not before it. Many people wait to feel confident before they begin. They believe that once they feel ready, they will act. But this often leads to delay because confidence rarely comes without experience. The truth is, you build confidence by doing. You act, you learn, you improve, and through that process, your belief in yourself increases. Action creates evidence, and evidence strengthens belief. Another key element of self-belief is how you respond to your own thoughts. Your mind will not always support you. It will produce doubts, fears, and negative assumptions, especially when you face challenges. You may hear thoughts like, "You're too late," "You're not good enough," "This is not working." These thoughts can feel convincing, but they are not facts, they are interpretations. And you have a choice in how you respond to them. You can accept them and allow them to stop you, or you can question them and continue anyway. Self-belief does not mean you never have doubt. It means you do not let doubt control your actions. For those who start late, it is also important to separate your past from your potential. Your past may include missed opportunities, delayed starts, or time that feels wasted. But your potential is not limited by those things. It is defined by what you choose to do now.
If you allow your past to define your future, you remain stuck. But if you use your present actions to shape your future, you create new possibilities. Self-belief is what allows you to make that shift. It helps you see that where you started does not determine where you can go. There is also a deeper layer to self-belief that goes beyond goals and progress. It is about identity. It is about seeing yourself as someone who is capable, someone who learns, someone who continues. This identity is not built through words, but through actions. Each time you act in alignment with your goals, you reinforce this identity, and over time, it becomes natural. You no longer need to convince yourself. You simply become someone who believes in their ability to grow.
However, self-belief does not mean ignoring reality. It does not mean overestimating your abilities or expecting immediate success. It means having a balanced perspective. You recognize that you're not perfect, that you have areas to improve, that progress will take time. But you also recognize that you are capable of improving, that your efforts matter, and that your future is not fixed. This balance keeps you grounded while still allowing you to move forward with confidence. As you continue your journey, you will notice that self-belief becomes stronger with experience. Each challenge you overcome, each skill you develop, each step you take adds to your confidence. What once felt uncertain begins to feel familiar. What once seemed impossible begins to feel achievable. And gradually, the belief that once required effort becomes part of who you are. For someone who started late, this transformation is especially meaningful, because at the beginning, the doubt may have been stronger than the belief, but through consistent action, that balance shifts, belief grows, doubt loses its power, and what once felt like a limitation becomes a source of strength. So do not wait for proof before you believe in yourself. Do not wait for results before you trust your path. Start with your actions. Show up, improve, continue. Let your effort become your evidence. Because in the end, self-belief is not something you find. It is something you build. And once you build it, it becomes one of the most powerful forces pushing you forward, even when nothing else seems certain. However, self-belief does not mean ignoring reality. It does not mean overestimating your abilities or expecting immediate success. It means having a balanced perspective. You recognize that you're not perfect, that you have areas to improve, that progress will take time. But you also recognize that you are capable of improving, that your efforts matter, and that your future is not fixed. This balance keeps you grounded while still allowing you to move forward with confidence. As you continue your journey, you will notice that self-belief becomes stronger with experience. Each challenge you overcome, each skill you develop, each step you take adds to your confidence. What once felt uncertain begins to feel familiar. What once seemed impossible begins to feel achievable. And gradually, the belief that once required effort becomes part of who you are. For someone who started late, this transformation is especially meaningful, because at the beginning, the doubt may have been stronger than the belief, but through consistent action, that balance shifts, belief grows, doubt loses its power, and what once felt like a limitation becomes a source of strength. So do not wait for proof before you believe in yourself. Do not wait for results before you trust your path. Start with your actions. Show up, improve, continue. Let your effort become your evidence. Because in the end, self-belief is not something you find. It is something you build. And once you build it, it becomes one of the most powerful forces pushing you forward, even when nothing else seems certain.
Conclusion. It was never about when you started. By now, one truth should feel clearer than it did at the beginning. Starting late was never the real problem. It only felt like one because of how it was interpreted. You were not limited by time itself, but by the meaning you gave to it. You believed that starting late meant being behind, that being behind meant having fewer chances, and that fewer chances meant lower possibilities.
But throughout this journey, you have seen something different. You have seen that time, while important, is not the deciding factor. What truly matters is how you use it, how you think, how you act, and how you continue. You have learned that starting late can bring clarity because you begin with awareness rather than confusion. You have seen how urgency, when directed properly, becomes a force that pushes you forward instead of holding you back. You have discovered that focus allows you to concentrate your energy on what truly matters, turning effort into meaningful progress. You have understood that consistency, even when it feels small, creates results that grow over time. You have explored how learning faster is not about rushing, but about being intentional and efficient. You have built discipline not as a restriction, but as a foundation that supports your actions when motivation fades. You have developed resilience, allowing you to move through setbacks instead of stopping because of them. And finally, you have strengthened self-belief, trusting yourself even before the results appear. Each of these elements is powerful on its own, but together they create something greater, a system, a way of thinking and acting that allows you to move forward regardless of where you started. This is what changes everything, because once you have a system, you are no longer dependent on perfect conditions. You do not need the right timing, the perfect opportunity, or the ideal starting point. You have something more reliable, a way to progress step by step, day by day. It is important to understand that getting ahead doesn't happen in a single moment. It is not a sudden leap that places you far beyond everyone else overnight. It is a gradual process, a quiet accumulation of actions, decisions, and improvements that build over time. At first, the changes may not be visible. You may still feel like you're in the same place. But if you continue, if you stay consistent, focused, and disciplined, something begins to shift. Slowly, the gap you once saw starts to close, not because time has changed, but because your approach has.
There will still be challenges. There will still be moments of doubt, periods of slow progress, and times when it feels easier to stop than to continue. This is part of the process. It does not mean you're failing. It means you are moving through the same difficulties that everyone faces, regardless of when they started. The difference now is that you are prepared. You have the mindset and the tools to handle these moments. You know how to respond, how to adjust, and how to continue. One of the most important shifts you can carry forward is this: stop thinking in terms of catching up. When you focus on catching up, you place yourself in constant comparison with others. You measure your progress against their timeline, their results, their journey. And this often leads to frustration because you are trying to follow a path that was never meant to be yours. Instead, focus on moving forward. Focus on becoming better than you were yesterday. This is where real progress happens, not in comparison, but in improvement. As you continue, you will begin to notice something important. The feeling of being late starts to disappear, not because time has changed, but because your perspective has. You no longer see yourself as someone who missed the start. You see yourself as someone who started with intention, someone who chose to act, someone who continues despite difficulty. And this identity changes everything, because once you see yourself this way, your actions follow. You become more consistent, more focused, more disciplined, not because you are forcing yourself, but because it aligns with who you are becoming. It is also important to recognize that your journey is not just about reaching a goal. It is about growth, about becoming someone who can handle challenges, who can adapt, who can continue even when things are not easy. The results you achieve matter, but the person you become in the process matters more, because that person is capable of achieving more, of growing further, and of continuing beyond any single goal. So, as you close this book, do not think of it as an ending. Think of it as a beginning.
Not the beginning you wish you had earlier, but the beginning you have now. A beginning built on awareness, intention, and action. A beginning that is not limited by the past, but defined by what you choose to do next. You were never too late. You were simply waiting for the moment when you would decide to move forward with purpose. And now that moment is here. What happens next is not determined by when you started. It is determined by whether you continue.